Yeah.
And for future, you can just throw this in the back of your mind, Jason. For future reference, there are a lot of dying ash trees on both properties, maybe 30 or 40 trees of substantial size. And I'm sure we could harvest them and mill them into boards or beams or something for use in the buildings.
Well, Jason, Blake, at your end, your microphone is off.
Phone is off.
Colin, there you go.
All right. Yep.
Hey, sorry about that. We didn't realize we were muted.
Oh, could you not hear me?
No, we didn't hear last minute or so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, all I said was that I'm delighted that your visit with Juan was good, and we're not surprised. Pretty much what I said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Conservation Authority fellows seemed to like him too, and they left saying that they would, be willing to work with us extensively and even sort of look for funding for projects and keep us in the loop when they hear of things like that as well. So I think that Juan was good at dealing with them. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, I think the purpose of the call is to kind of get us all aligned on where we are now, and then to sort of identify any issues that we need to discuss or any changes we need to make before we push through. So we wanted to give you kind of an overview of where we think we are and some questions that we have for you guys, for different people, and some decisions that we need your help making, and just move things along. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So I think what we were planning to do was do a quick walkthrough of the chart house in particular, and on a lesser level, we're going to walk through some things that relate to the master plan in terms of services, in particular water systems, septic and drain field locations, and also walk you through some of the ideas that Integral is generating with our feedback that we want to talk to you about, and then end up in a place where we're aligned around what has to happen now through the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sounds great.
So I don't know. We're going to get the drawings up, and if either one of you wanted to walk through, or
Yeah. So, and you can see our screen, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right. Yeah. So we just wanted to flip through the drawing set real quick, just so you guys kind of see where we are and how we're setting up the package. And this has the drawings for the entire chart house, but we're really focusing on trying to coordinate the basement related stuff so that you guys can start doing things on the site in the next few weeks. I think we're trying to get you some coordination drawings by October 8th. So, yep, drawing set. We have our cover page. We're starting to build out the doors and windows schedule, and we're just going to go pretty quick here so you get the lay of the land, but feel free to stop me if you want to zoom in on anything. We have our assembly drawings, so we're going to have the basement floor similar to what you guys were originally planning, with the insulation below the slab, and then a radiant floor downstairs over the slab with the topping slab. The main level floor would also, currently we're designing it also to have a radiant slab, and we'll get into the full mechanical system in a few minutes here. The roof assembly is the same as you had originally been thinking in the original drawings.
Okay.
And I do want to point out that we're wanting to get Pete's feedback in particular, and Todd's. If there's any details that you guys think we should modify, then we're very open to that. This is the current thinking, and included in that, of course, is this whole discussion around insulating the walls or not on the lower level, and those kinds of things. So I'll let Blake continue, but I just wanted to set the stage that this is a collaborative process. We have been getting information from Integral that's informing us in terms of needed R values and implications and occupancy, and now we're at a place where as we run through this, we need to make some decisions with your help, and then we can make changes as we need to any of these details as a result of those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So the site plan, we'll talk about the septic strategy that we're looking at right now. You can also see that we're proposing that the condensers would go in the lane area, so we'd still maintain a 12-foot lane, but take some of that space over for condensers and the septic tank, which we'll dive into. Keep going. So then we have our floor plans on the main level, which is in the middle drawing. You enter in the washrooms to your right, and a little lobby area as you enter in, and then the main space to the plan north of that. And as we know, we're adding another line of trusses and extending the building up on the page. Then the drawing on the left is the basement. You'll see we are showing furred out walls around the perimeter, as Jason was starting to hint at, with the idea that we could gain some R value down there, which would help with the overall reduction of energy required to condition the space, the upper level. And then the drawing on the right is the mezzanine space over the lobby and the main level washroom, which would have some mechanical equipment on them as well.
The PV extends.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of a drawing glitch here that the PVs would not overhang the roof, but the idea being that photovoltaics would be on the south pitch, and we're looking at having supply and exhaust for the ventilation system on the north roof, which isn't drawn here yet. Then we have reflective ceiling plans, where we're starting to show first pass at lighting for each level. The elevation, so this is reflecting what you've all seen in the renderings that we've been sharing with you. And then building sections, enlarged plans for the upper and basement level washrooms. And then these are very much in progress, interior elevations. These are really just placeholders at this point. And then also placeholders, wall sections, and then we'll be drawing the details in the 800 series. So that's the way the drawing set is built currently.
And then you want to do the MEP? Walk them through the MEP.
Yeah. So why don't we pull up Integral's last set of sketches, even though we're changing things.
I just got a question on the mechanicals on the outside on the east side wall by the front. Is there any way to disguise those things? Because they do look, because it's very visible from the street, right?
I know. Well, we're going to want to put it in some sort of enclosure, some sort of wood enclosure or something. But, there's the building is really public on all sides, or will be eventually, right? So
yeah, it's probably the lowest value.
We don't want to have it in the plaza side, and we don't want to have it on the side with the solar panels, because we think that's going to be more public, and we do think that driveway there is more of like a service drive as opposed to a big public access point. So it seems like the best general spot, but then we need to build a screen around it. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, it is obviously a pinch point really with the deck there, right? In terms of, access, I guess.
you mean the front entry porch?
No, I'm talking about the neighbor's deck that sticks over on our property.
Yeah. I mean, we could push it downward a little bit, but it is relating to the equipment that's in the loft in that area.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about it. There is. So there's not a great spot for this equipment anywhere.
Yeah. It's always stuff that you don't want to see, you don't want to have.
So I presume these are condenser evaporators for the HVAC system. And so have we switched away from the idea of running a water loop into the river?
Integral is not proposing that we do that. It's something we could talk to them about. Let us walk you through what they're proposing, and then let's discuss it.
Sure.
So the condensers are for the ERD system.
Yeah.
Okay. So these sketches show I guess we can't really zoom in too easily. Show some back and forth that we've been doing with Integral, and so the big idea is that we have fresh air requirements and we have heating and cooling requirements, right? The fresh air is being handled through energy recovery ventilation system on both the basement level, which will be very small, and then one for the main level, which would be held in the attic, which would be a bit larger. And we're designing this to accommodate an occupancy load of about 35 people.
On the upper level.
On the upper level. And that's not to say that you couldn't have events with upwards to 50 people. It's just at the very highest peaks in the summer and the winter, the equipment's being sized for 35 people.
So we have this tension, as you guys know, in terms of what kind of building this is legally being described as, and we're describing it as an office building, which has a particularly low occupancy. But we want to be able to use the building for larger functions, and we think it will be. And so the question then is, in terms of the mechanical system and ventilation rates, is, well, where do you size this to? Which reality? And we don't want to size it so that only 12 people can be in the building at any one time, and then there's, that's not a very sustainable thing when we want to have other events. But if we size it towards 50 or more people, then the system starts getting overly large for how infrequent those conditions will actually occur. So we're trying to pick a sweet spot where we have appropriate amount of ventilation that can handle larger slugs of people, but with the understanding that there may be times when it will be a bit uncomfortable in there if it is packed to the gills, if that makes sense. And so we're trying to separate the heating loads, for example, from the ventilation loads as well. So we do have radiant heating on both levels, which also then helps to reduce the size of the air system. But the air system is needed on the upper level to handle conditions when there are huge, large amounts of people that would gather in here for some sort of little event or presentation. So that's what Integral's trying to toggle between with this proposed system.
Yeah, that sounds
okay.
Sounds great.
That's good. Can we just confirm that they do know it's possible to run heat exchange loops out into the river?
We'll talk to them about that for sure.
because I think there's quite a difference in efficiency levels between air-to-air heat pumps and actual direct water exchange ones. And I'm not really that up to snuff on which is better, but I think the air-to-air ones do have their limitations, and I'm not sure exactly what those are, but I just would like to make sure that they got the message that we're allowed to do that.
Yeah, no, we'll make sure that they are. I think again, there's sort of two different issues here, because what you're talking about it has to do with load reduction in terms of heating and cooling, but ventilation, which can only happen on an air basis, is the driving issue for the upper level.
Yeah, for sure. I understand we're definitely going to have, either way, we're going to have some heat recovery ventilation or something like that. But the reason I'm bringing this up is if you go with a system that has the water loop out into the river, then there isn't an object outside the building that takes up space, that creating that choke point. Because usually the mechanicals that go along with that are indoors.
Well, we'll run that by them again.
Okay, great, thanks.
So Jason, it sounds like the tension you're talking about when you get higher occupancies, what will make it uncomfortable is that it's too hot. So you're actually talking about cooling the space. Is that correct?
Well, it's actually the ventilation rates inside. So the problem is in the peak summer, if you have it full in the peak summer, you would have to open up the windows in order to get enough ventilation that the CO2 levels are not rising, and then you're suddenly subjecting them to the outside temperatures. So this is the challenge, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay, one of the options that we had explored before, and I don't know if Philip had decided to walk back from this or not, was using an earth tube to precondition air coming into the building. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool passive low tech technology. Is that anything that is on the table? You know,
we had mentioned that to them at the beginning. This is what they have come back with. I'm not sure that from a cost delta standpoint, it's what you want to do, but again, with something that's why we're talking. This they only just recently gave us this proposed design, so we wanted to share with you.
Okay.
So Jason, it's Philip. We, me knowing me, and I'm the guy that sits outside all the time, including now, with a jacket on. So I would naturally see that space as being pretty often with windows open. Like, so there's this sort of ventilation strategy. Obviously, like you mentioned before, you're not going to do it when it's 30 degrees outside and humid and all of that stuff. But on all the shoulder days, which are plenty, or even part of the day, like that would be a very natural thing that I would want to do, that's not going to mess anything up.
I think the intention is when the outside conditions are conducive, you open up all the windows as much as you want.
I love you, man. Awesome.
Yeah, the challenge they're having is what happens is how do they design for the conditions when it's the worst case, when it's too humid and hot, buggy, and then you have 50 people in there, and now you're not very happy.
Yeah, you say
sorry. They don't like getting those calls.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Your wedding will have to be tomorrow morning before 10 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, right. We'll talk to them. We'll reiterate that again, that your desire is as much natural ventilation as humanly possible.
Yeah.
We have already mentioned that to them, of course.
Yeah, that's great. And the other thing I mentioned, which you and I talked about, was my sort of aversion to, motor noise and that kind of stuff, like ventilation related, man-made, things like fridges and ticking clocks and all that crazy stuff that I think the mechanicals now, they're going to sit either outside or up on the up in that area. So is there any special baffling we can use just to attenuate that in some sort of way?
Yeah, so you're correct that it was really important when you told us that was important to you, because we've been trying to respond to that. So first of all, yes, the equipment is either upstairs, and then we've now added a full wall that would be a sound insulating wall separating the space from the mechanical system that's up there, and then of course there's equipment that's outside the building. But the only risk is, of course, still that when you run ducts through the space, which we have to do in order to get proper distribution, there are ducts running through the trusses on both sides of the building, from the entry side all the way to the riverside. And there will be some noise that will come through those ducts, the air movement, etc.
Sure.
We could presumably have a flexible plenum at or near that baffling wall, right? To kind of attenuate some of that.
Would doing a larger diameter pipe do anything on that, or is it counterproductive from a flow perspective?
Well, usually Integral is pretty good about trying to specify low pressure drop, low velocity, large duct systems.
Okay.
But and so we can circle back with them on the pressure drop issue. But I think we're at the same time we're a little bit limited on the area within the trusses that we have to run the ducts through.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, again, it's always a balance of those things. So we'll just reiterate to them again that we're trying to attenuate noise as much as possible, and we want to make sure that the ventilation isn't straining, so to speak, and therefore creating additional whistling or any other noise.
Yeah, and that's great. And I mean, because it's just nice to mention the sensitivity and sort of say, if there's an extra little mile here, an extra little mile here, I'm motivated for that, right? So,
Yeah.
It helps, because sometimes they focus on, it's a little cheaper, it's a little this, and you're going, well, to me, those are things you live with for the whole life of the building, right? So, and every day. So,
I'm just remembering some talks that I had with. I don't know how far they reached, but we were talking about pulling cooler basement air up into the main floor, and I wonder if that consideration could sort of help deal with some of those peak times that aren't really designed for.
Well, the reason we're not going down that realm is we're assuming that it could be very uncompatible uses between lower and upper. And we're trying to keep the two almost as separate buildings in terms of your ability to use them, and even so that's the main thing. And I have my concerns about air quality a bit more on the lower level than I do on the upper level.
Understandable. Okay.
So that's where we are. So I think that's good feedback that we'll bring back to Integral on your concerns, and we'll inquire about the cooling in the river, and acoustics for sure, and we'll keep that going.
The river thing, that's also for heating too, heat pump, like with.
Yep. Constant temperature.
Yeah.
Or more or less, a little bit more constant.
Yeah.
But so they'll look into it. I don't know how deep it gets, how quickly.
It gets pretty deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were docking ships right off the wharf there. So.
Yeah, I know.
Ships maybe is a little bit of an exaggeration, like medium-sized wooden cargo boats, I guess.
Yeah, with drafts of 10 feet maybe or something.
It's hard for us to say, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I wonder. I mean, the river gets pretty bloody cold in the winter, right?
Yeah,
It freezes over, but it does stay above freezing, not very far below the surface.
yeah, it'll be a massive
Yeah, no.
3 degrees or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's enough temperature lift to make that big a deal in the winter months when you're trying to use it for that, you know?
Well, I'm pretty sure it is done.
Yeah, it is done. It's certainly done around our part of the world here, but it never freezes. Like it's all about the delta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but anyway, we're not against it. I think we just want our engineers to tell us why it's a great idea or why it's not worth it. Either one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Okay, so if we're going through the agenda, you guys wanted to talk about the basement dry-in.
Yeah, and I think also the insulation situation down in the basement, which is related to sizing of the mechanical system.
Yeah.
Todd, when you and I talked, you had mentioned, and we've had the emails going back and forth, that the mason that you're using, which in Philip's word is he's a rock star, which is good to hear, has some concerns about insulating that wall from the inside, because then that will cause the wall to get too cold, which will cause a freeze-thaw action with moisture in the wall. So you guys sent us that information, which the big picture takeaway on that is it strongly recommends having a moisture professional advise on the project. So I don't know, I think this is more of a roundtable conversation and kind of see where everyone's thoughts are.
And did Integral say what the difference, if we didn't insulate it, how much impact that would have on the system choice or the sizing that they currently have?
They didn't quantify it, but they said that insulating it was, in their mind, pretty important to
Yeah, of course they would say
downsize.
that. Yeah, that's how much. Yeah, okay. Well, you guys were originally planning on or thinking that you would be insulating the whole thing, and I think I was the one who was saying don't insulate the upper level. One, for the aesthetic effect, but two, I wasn't sure whether that was the best thing or not for the stone. But then we were kind of thinking, well, let's insulate the lower level to at least mitigate the energy impacts. But this question remains on whether over many years that's the best thing for these stone walls. So,
well, there's a few things. There's a few things we can do to kind of like make it more feasible to insulate. For instance, smart vapor barriers we can try that seem to know when you want more perm ratings and when you don't, which is hard to believe, but they do claim to do that. And we could have like a 1 inch airspace in between the insulation and have like a humidistat in there and some power ventilation or something like that. So sort of similar to how you draw radon at them from underneath the floor. You could similarly intermittently pull moisture out between your insulation wall and the stone. I know it sounds kind of Inspector Gadgety, but I think a useful kind of direction to think about.
I think a moisture professional is helpful. We actually were not ever planning to insulate the stone wall. It was planning to be covered with a lime plaster, and so the upper part wasn't going to be insulated. All of our research was from Europe, where they're trying to retrofit 6 million stone homes, right? And to their chagrin, all of it kept coming back saying, don't insulate, because if you insulate, then it leads to a premature failure of the wall. And that's one of the things that document that I sent to Blake indicates. John Cook, it was interesting. Jerry, the engineer, was here as well yesterday. And he knows John, and he said it's hard to find anybody better than John. He said that's probably not what you could say about his competition, but that's where it is. And John's pretty adamant that this masonry will fail.
Yeah.
The room in the basement, the old the walls were cladded with studs and a tongue and pine, and the studs did not have any rot to them. But Pete and I were talking about this earlier. There were many spots on the walls that had experienced significant mechanical failure in the masonry, and the masons had to do a lot of significant repair. At one point, right on almost to the outside of the building. It's hard to say whether that was the result of even that little bit of buffer there or not. It's really it's a big enough risk issue that I think the moisture is something we should have that professional, someone who knows how to give us some advice on how to handle it, so that Pete can try his Inspector Gadget thing with some confidence. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm a little bit wary about relying on sensors to tell us whether we need to rip the wall out we built, or something. So I think one thing we need to do right away is talk to Integral to better understand, if we don't insulate, what does it mean for our conditioning systems, and understand what that implication is. And yeah, I think we need some advice, unless you guys want to just say we're not insulating under there.
Philip, I think it's really your call.
Well, I mean, I think
Oh, go ahead, Phil.
sorry, I was just going to say, I mean, I think there's there'll be so much heat loss. I think any opportunity to to mitigate that would make sense. Obviously, in light of the discussion, it's something that needs to be done. Like so obviously we could say not do it, but I think it's definitely worth looking at what could possibly be done, because it would have, if we could do it successfully, it would have a major impact, I think, on energy use.
Yeah, and given that you're going to do a net zero energy building, you're going to end up paying for it, because you're going to have to buy more solar at a minimum.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So, and you may or may not have enough roof area suddenly even to make the building net zero with roof only because of this. So,
yeah.
So I think, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, sorry, there's a little lag. One of the things, of course, that we want to do with this building is have it as an example. And I think while, we may be able to sort of financially tolerate, the flow of heat, that I think we have the opportunity to be an example for all the other stone buildings around, to say this is a successful way of insulating that won't result in failure of the masonry. So so that's why I'd be interested in going down that route, just because we have the opportunity to even measure, like we can put sensors in, humidity sensors, whatever we do, we can, I want to make this a teaching building. So, I want to embed all kinds of sensors in there, and we'll gather the data and see what it is. And it may not be perfect, but we'll at least have a real experience.
I'd also like to say, it'd be nice to not use any materials that can mold in the basement, like some sort of a system of steel studs or something like that. That, like, who cares if it rusts, But we definitely care if something molds.
Right. We agree completely, and we're if we were to insulate it, we would propose mineral wool, which is resistant to moisture and mold.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So let's keep going then. I think we have our path is to get more information and a better sense of what could be done if we were to try to insulate it.
So are we going to bring a moisture professional?
I think we're going to find one and get a proposal, and then tell Philip what it is, and he can decide.
Okay.
Let's just make sure it's somebody from a similar latitude as we're at.
So not from the Barbados?
Yeah, it's, I mean,
And it would be good to have that person connect with, it would be good to have that person connect with John Cook as well, so that we're talking about moisture as it works through a historic masonry wall with fairly weak mortar in the joints that allows for the breathing of the building.
Right. Okay.
Yes, it is definitely a very vapor permeable mortar that we're using. It's about as vapor permeable as you can go and still have things fairly stable.
Okay. So then, around the exterior, just to make sure that we're on the same page, your plan currently is to dig around the exterior, dig down, to do a dimple board along the face of the stone below grade, and then backfill that, or put weep tile or French drain type thing around the perimeter, then backfill that with gravel, and then fill it back in with soil. Is that correct?
Yeah, we could do a drain board in there for a little extra insulation buffering too.
Yeah, when Jerry was here, when Jerry was here yesterday, he suggested that we also put some foam insulation, rigid foam insulation down there to at least get some below grade insulation against the wall.
Yeah.
As well as what you.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
keep going.
then the Hikecrete for the slab to prevent water from coming up from below. The idea.
Sorry, the Hikecrete, did you say?
Yeah. So yes, that's what we proposed. Jerry said that he needed to do a little research on it. He doesn't want to get into a situation where the rising water will actually, will create a buoyancy effect with the slab, where he's had some situations where that has been possible. So he's connected him with our Hikecrete supplier, and he just has to work through the details on that to be confident we're not going to run into a problem with the slab wanting to lift.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So you've been communicating directly with Jerry on that one then?
Yeah, he was here yesterday.
Oh, right.
Okay, cool. How did that go?
It went really well. He said I'll just give you the big overview. He said the stables are pretty much in pretty good shape. Even the lousy little chicken coop at the end. So he needs to take some of the boards off to see what joists look like in between the spacing is to determine any occupancy. But he said overall it's in pretty good shape. He also said the same thing of the garage as well. For the chart house, he has some concerns about the timbers. He said they were not actually built to spec, and there aren't as many pins in the joints as were called for. So we need to talk to you folks about what the load-bearing capacity of those are going to be to decide what to do with them. So.
Yikes. Okay. Well, we'll be talking with him right away on that front then.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Should we switch over to septic strategy? And why don't we pull up the...
Oh, what about the point cloud guide? And has he come and finished his work? Or am I missing the timing on that?
I thought he finished his work and went home.
Okay, so we haven't received his product yet that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Okay, we'll follow up, but he did come. Okay.
Yeah.
Jerry was really interested to receive that as well for the building.
Of course. Yep.
And by the way, Juan wanted he was going to get after you, Blake, because he wanted those drone videos. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll send those right over. Okay, so why don't we go to Pete's sketches first? And I mean, sorry if this is a scribbled sketch, but we've been throwing a lot of ideas back and forth. This is over an older iteration of the master plan, so we don't need to look in too much detail. But generally, the idea would be for the chart house, we'd have the septic tank to the side, as we were showing in the previous drawing. And then from there, it would be pumped over to a drain field, which is shown in blue along the road. And we have a more detailed drawing that shows the required setbacks and everything of that drain field from the road and the property line, which we'll get to in a second. And that there would also be a little treatment area associated with that, and that both the drain field and the treatment system would be sized for the future construction of the yellow building and the 2 or 3 orange buildings here, if you point to those 3. So it would be oversized for the chart house, but it would be in anticipation of those 4 buildings coming in the future. And then when the building adjacent to the tower gets constructed, another septic tank, number 2, would be added, and you can point to that, which would then be pumped up to that drain field that had already been sized to accommodate it to that light blue zone there. So does that conceptually make sense?
Looks. I like the idea that it's as far to the edge of the property as possible, because we're going to be probably going to be playing sort of like Tetris with wells and septic fields and stuff like that over the years. And I like the idea that it's as far away from potential wells as possible.
Yeah, I think the requirement, if I remember correctly, is 50 feet or something like that.
Oh, well, I think it's 100.
It could, yeah.
I think it's 100, but yeah, I think 100.
Yeah, for the drain field.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I am happy about that Pete's done his analysis around is that we have enough site, and I'm not even including the new addition to the left side. I'm not including that at all. We have enough site with the buildup that we're suggesting to handle all the black water and gray water through a fairly conventional septic drain field treatment system. We do not have to have a living machine or a highly expensive, crazy system, unless you want that, of course, but that we don't have to, that we can actually do this in a much more low-tech, piecemeal way as things get rolled out, which I was happy to hear. Even at full build-out, as we're showing, your site can handle it all.
Oh, that's great.
Fantastic.
Lower tech, the better. As much as I'd love to have a living machine, but low tech certainly is better.
Yeah, living machines are cool, but they're not fun to have to be the operator of.
Yeah.
That was my concern, if you might remember our conversation, that, you know, it would trigger an expensive investment that you'd really have to make sure that the income side would be supportive of that investment. And and I think that this is reassuring. Yeah, and you know, like you said, the point here is that we're making sure to get the drain field out of the way so that we're not having to dig things up, you know, while we're building phase 2 or phase 3 or however we end up slicing it.
So the septic tank that is going beside the chart house, is that the current septic tank that we have? Is that what you're envisioning there, or something else?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, we're anticipating using the one you already bought, and it would go in a similar location to the condensing units that we were just discussing, but it would be buried. So there's a lot going on that side, and then there would be a line that would run up towards the street, and then, hanging on tight left, and then, going over to where we're showing the blue shaded area.
I don't think you're going to actually be able to bury that tank there.
Yeah, the bedrock's pretty high.
The bedrock. Unless you're going to use.
We can chip the bedrock out, but it's work.
Oh, well, so this is good. Then it could potentially just go, since we're going to be building that plaza up, we could just sort of tuck it under the plaza there, and still do the same plan.
Yeah, it's unknown how what's underneath that current concrete slab we have next to the chart house, and where the bedrock is in relation to it. But that's probably the best bet of places to tuck it.
Yeah.
You want to pull up that drawing that Todd has sent us that had the red X's and stuff?
Well, I think if we're going to start getting stuff ready for winter and trying to get the lower level, the drains in and everything else, you're going to want to start doing that right away, right?
Start doing.
Yeah. We need to figure it out for sure.
Yeah, we need to figure it out.
I was thinking that it sort of tucked under in here, where then the new wall would be put.
Right. You want to point to that maybe? Kind of in this area. So would it make sense for it to be
Here?
maybe in that zone there? Yeah.
Do we need to have someone come in and knock that out and dig it down, see what we have in terms of depth there? See if that's going to work? Yeah,
I think if we're wanting to get started on the lower level, you're going to need to be exposing the foundation all around to get your drains in, and if we're going to put the septic down in there, we're going to need to see if we can.
Yeah. The existing garage there that you see on this design, it has bedrock in the coming out into the corner there near the chart house. That's so it's pretty, and it's on the outside of the roadside of the chart house. It's only 2 feet below grade. So we could be in for some surprises there, but probably we should find that out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, funnily enough, I just got a letter in the mail when I showed up last night after driving back from the health unit, right? So regarding the sewage, and they said, well, our records indicate that you haven't done anything for the last 12 months, and so you need to pay at least a renewal fee of $62. But if you're changing the location or anything, you have to reapply.
Is that just for the septic or for the drain field?
No, it says it says a sewage system permit. So
yeah, it's because we removed it, and that was to come later. And Bobby didn't put something together for that. So,
I think they just say we need to hear back from you by the end of the end of October. Otherwise, it will be deemed revoked, which would mean we just have to apply from scratch. So but if we say if we're gonna, well, it's just whatever, $900 or something. But they say, so even if we make a change and we say we're going to be submitting something, then that's all they want is the notice. It doesn't say that they need all that information by then, but just it's basically a response to the letter with a status.
Okay.
Let me make a suggestion, and maybe you have other plans for this space. But where the red X is, I think that's where the septic tank used to be. Holding tank used to be. Is that area possible?
It's possible. The problem is that the more to the right that it appears, the more that it would end up impacting anything we might want to do with another building there or with the green space. So we're just trying to get stuff out of the way so that we're not precluding something, cool from being developed in prime spots.
Yeah, I totally gotcha. So if we moved it to the left, but not up where the current slab of concrete is, because I think if we move it anywhere up where that current slab of concrete is, it's going to really impede what we're able to do with the plaza.
Yeah, well, you're gonna get these, like 2-foot diameter green plastic lids to look at, right?
But we could move it closer where those blue X's, those 3 blue X's are. I'll get it up near the wall. See how deep we can get there. Pete, do you remember how deep we went with the corner of that when we dug for the corner of the stairwell? Is it 8 feet, 10 feet?
I think where the red X is, the bedrock starts at about 8 feet, and where the left-hand blue X's are, it starts to lose depth. Sort of like, as you might think, the further away from the river you get, the more elevation the bedrock has.
How about
I would say there might have been by the middle, like the lower middle blue X, maybe 6 feet of depth there, you might think. As regards to the current grade, now, like after the slab gets pulled out, that might well be a bit deeper there. We don't know.
Well, how about if you would it make sense? Like, we know that where the current ledge is, so we know that's whatever 8 feet, 10 feet down, right? How about just sort of building something up underneath, and building that up to grade, and then just extending, sort of extending that surface out, because it's not a big width, right? It would be like, okay, it would be like extend the grade out another whatever width of that. And then, because then for sure you have the depth, and it would be visibly just there, right? You wouldn't really notice it because it would be, the slab would just be extended.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the depth, and there's no issue with any of that. It's just it'll just be basically supporting the weight. I mean, it could even step down, I suppose, and just sit right on whatever the bedrock is.
I'm pretty sure that Luke Galenzi has a hydraulic breaker for one of his big high hose, so it wouldn't be too hard for him to get into the bedrock some. And it's not like unmovable. Huh?
No, but I'm just thinking, like, that kind of serious vibration probably isn't good for the tower or the chart house, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
So Jason and Blake, what kind of information can we provide for you so you can make a informed decision? Because I think your design of the plaza figures into this, and the other buildings that you're planning to stick in this area. What would be helpful?
Well, I think the challenge is that we're all shooting in the dark a bit as to where that rock really is.
Yeah.
So to the extent that we can start preparing the work that's needed to be done anyway for the chart house, lower level, and try to investigate and determine what the contours of that rock ledge are, that would be a very useful thing. And I think we can float around a little bit the exact location of where that septic tank is if we know the extent of our limitations, if you will.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe we get Luke in and then sort of peel back the concrete at the closer to the ledge, like, I don't know, come back, whatever, even if it's part way, like break it just right at the edge and then see where the cliff ends up really being. Would that make sense?
Well, I think what Jason's talking about is doing the excavating all around the chart house so that we can complete the drainage work, which is work we have to do anyway, and that will give us a reveal of where the bedrock is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's get going.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a reason not to start that.
I mean, our goal is for you to get to be able to place that slab in the lower level and get the lower level moving forward as soon as we can. We've just been having to do enough due diligence on the overall building to make sure we, weren't painting ourselves into a corner on some other issue. I feel like we're getting close there. We still need to talk to Integral one more time now about the idea of using the river water for preconditioning. We need to check on a couple things, but I'm hoping that we're very close to being able to say go under your existing permit, and let's start getting that slab in. Let's start getting everything into the lower level. So it seems like we're already there in terms of clearing an area around the perimeter of the building to start getting ready to put drains in and all that. And might as well get that going while the weather's still not bad. If you guys agree.
Yeah,
only
that
tricky.
would be-
Oh, go ahead, Pete.
I think that will gain a ton of information from that, and it would also be nice to have the weeping tile and the dimple board, et cetera, outside. And yeah, I think that's a good forward step.
The other thing, sooner than later, also because we know that the below grade, the condition of the masonry hasn't been great, right? So and we know it's like when I was out there 2 days ago, when I drove from Todd's to the tower, it was 3 degrees, which is below the 4 degrees minimum 24-hour run rate for outdoor for hardening of the masonry, curing, right? So there isn't a whole lot of time. I'm sure. I mean, obviously, like last year, we went sort of into November before it got too sketchy. But there'll be maybe days we can't do it. So I would figure there's probably going to be some repair work to do when we dig down. So sooner the better on that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're quite right. It's great that we already have our masons here.
Well, we've been their full-time job for the last year or 2 years almost.
Yeah.
The only downside is that slab that currently is there is really convenient for staging a lot of the construction, and the masons are using it.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, they can rejig though. They can rejig though.
Yeah. So
They can
everybody. Yeah. Okay, good. We'll do it.
Great, guys.
Yeah, so we had a few other things on the agenda, but not that are particular to the basement and getting started on things. So I would propose that we could adjourn unless you wanted to keep going.
Well, I have a quick question. I know Michelle's not on the call, and she sent me an email saying, could I follow up? So on Jason, you talked about saying, okay, in terms of LBC, do we go after pedal now and then full blown once we do the plaza? So there's some shared, or at some future stage, do we ramp the pedals in, sort of preparing for the full certification, but not going for that out of the gate, or and given the chart house being a little challenging on the energy side, what the deal was that is. So it was just basically her comment was how do you suggest we go knowing now more than what we used to know?
Yeah, so I'm more encouraged by the water pedal side for this building than I was before, given what we've now learned from Pete. So it doesn't seem like that's now a barrier. This energy issue in terms of insulating the stone walls calls into question the net zero energy in terms of just using the roof, but you could certainly put solar somewhere else on site whenever you're ready and get that one going. And then, I think the big thing is that anything we're putting in the building now, whether it's the drainage system or whatever, that somebody is tracking for the materials pedal, the requirements. And I think that's Michelle from what we've discussed, because you know, we don't want to trip up and use the wrong stuff in that area. So that's the critical path.
And it is a pretty, fortunately now that it's sort of stripped back, and it's a much simpler proposition, I think, material wise.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I'd love to get materials. I mean, materials is something that always drives me crazy with all the crap that's in it. So I know it's a big burden, but it's a worthy one.
Okay, good. So I think that's the discussion with, I think what I guess I'm saying is if you want to go for it, you could go for it. And I don't see now a reason why you can't, but then we better get on the materials stuff, since Pete's going to be needing to get materials on hand. We'll need to make sure they're compliant.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that where the only risk is maybe not enough solar, and because we just do as much as we can do. What I like about that is it means we don't put in some outrageous amount that ends up not getting used, that we'll actually be able to occupy the building, track the use, and then say, oh, we really only need another 5 kilowatts or whatever to make this net positive. And then, obviously the other buildings in, say, the plaza will come in, and there'll be opportunities for overage, hopefully there. And then at that point, we just go for the final piece at that point.
That's correct.
Okay.
Could I just add that solar has gotten cheap enough that we actually sometimes see people putting PV on the north side of buildings?
Yeah, you're right. That we're seeing people.
Since our building isn't even strictly east-west, that may be worth something to look at.
Yeah, you're right that it's starting to show up in places that 15 years ago someone would have been shot if they had said they were putting solar in those locations. So you're right that if we just needed a little bit more capacity in the end, we could put it on the other side of the roof maybe and make it up, knowing that it's generating a much less capacity. But that is an acceptable solution.
It would be biased.
What's that? Hello?
I think we lost somebody.
I think it was Pete Clapson.
Yeah,
we would just.
Get their bio.
I gotta jump out in a few minutes.
Oh, okay. I think we're wrapping up. There was a question that we did that we had an email exchange about the entry to the building and the width of the accessible bathroom, and how we were planning on sort of hiding that condition. Are we all in alignment on that? We'll try to get here. We'll try to go to it. It's not, I mean, it's not ideal, but we're working within existing confines here. Hold on, we're going to zoom in.
Yeah.
So, as you accurately point out, from the outside, it looks like, underneath the lintel, that there is an insert which would have a door, a glass panel, and a solid panel, an opaque panel. And that opaque panel would hide the fact that the accessible restroom has to poke out. And we have to have it poke out if we're going to make this an accessible bathroom. And for Living Building Challenge, it has to be an accessible bathroom.
Of course. Yeah.
And just for decency, I think, as well. And there's a question of whether, like, we're not showing an accessible bathroom right now on the lower level. That's a question that we should be asking ourselves down there as well. So
I think I would do it. I think if we start, we might as well plan for it now, because I think that separate use downstairs, like you said, it'll be like a completely different building down there. And I think, one of the thoughts that I had already was, is getting people who have accessibility issues into the water in that kind of space to be able to, get them, and therefore having an accessible washroom downstairs would just make sense anyway.
you said yes to accessible downstairs. Is that what you just said?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so we have your buy-off here. Is there any other design feedbacks that you want to give us on any of this? Like right now we're showing some sort of built-in seating when you come in to the left of the lobby, and then you pass, there'll be some sort of partition, acoustically potentially, that allows you to separate the lobby if you wanted to. And then when you get on the other side of the wall, there's a little kitchenette with the dishwasher below, the sink, a little bit of storage. It's not a big kitchen, but it's what we have. And there'll be some sort of ladder up to a hatch to get you up to the loft, where you can use the loft for storage of chairs. I think that ladder will sort of slide right over to the center.
Yeah.
And then the center is where the opening is.
Right.
Kind of like a library ladder?
You got it.
I like all of that. I like the idea of going into the front and having above the, because the stone, it's your chance to interact with the stone, when you hang up your coats or whatever on that left side, which I think is great. Because then it's a very personal, contact. Then the division between, that the vestibule, I think is great because, you can think of many events where there's what's going on inside and you want to really sort of prepare people and have that separation of, the shuffling and all that stuff that goes on up front, compared to what's going on in the space, which may be, a small concert or something, right? Something quiet or some meetings or whatever where that would make sense.
Yeah, but it's pretty much like the interior design is pretty straightforward. We're letting your trusses shine, your stone work shine. There'll be some sort of hanging pendant lights that will be in that space. There could be ceiling fans if we want, with lights in them. Wood ceiling. We need to decide, are we doing a wood floor over concrete in the upper level, or is it just a concrete topping that's polished? That's some decision that you need to make with us.
How soon?
For the upper level. How soon?
I thought we had talked about that one. Talked that one through. We had wanted to put like a white warm board type of finish over top of it, so we could not have the heat tied to the thermal mass of the slab. Or is that not relevant anymore because of the different proposal for heating?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. We were assuming that there's a radiant system in the topping slab.
Okay. Yeah. So because the slab is tied to the walls, and when you put radiant in the slab, as you know, it just takes so long to heat up. There's a long transition, and so we thought because the building might stand empty for periods of time, that it would be better to have a quick response system like the warm board system.
Yeah. No, we have a quick response system with the air system tied to the slab. So this particular design, if I understand it, the slab is just helping to temper and ameliorate the conditions so that the air system doesn't have to be too huge, but the air system is doing some of the work alongside the slab and allows you to have a quicker response. Is that your understanding, guys?
Yeah. No, exactly.
Okay, but I still have a bit of an issue with having the heat tubes in something that's poured right onto the slab, because there's no way for us to insulate the outer edges of the slab, because they're going to be conducting straight through the stone, right? They're connected viscerally with the stone. So
okay, we'll talk to Integral about that as well, and see what they think of that idea. And so were you thinking about a wood floor then on top of that?
Yeah.
Would you guys like a wood floor? Is that what you want?
I'd like a wood floor.
Well, wood floor is better for dancing, better for your joints, but it has different strengths and weaknesses compared to concrete.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Michelle wants a wood floor.
Yeah, I think,
Okay, and then we
I think,
could have tile at the entry, maybe. Maybe there's
Yeah.
tile in the entry, just
Yeah.
the mud and the snow.
yep,
Yeah, great. Good. Yeah.
Soapstone.
Okay,
yeah, that's great.
okay.
I like that.
So that there's our assembly then. Is there anything else you wanted to know?
So Jason, you had asked us about if we had any questions or thoughts about the design stuff. Were you talking just about the entryway, or are you talking about everything you've shown us so far?
Everything is fair game, man.
Well, I know our time's short. It would be possible for you guys to send us what you've shown us, and we'll
Yep.
get a quick turn on any questions we have on things.
Beautiful. That's exactly what we plan to do.
Wow, that's great. Covered great ground. I think it's awesome.
So in the brief second that I got to look at your detail page, I did notice some artifacts of the communication trouble that we were having with Bobby Ill's office. So there are definitely going to be some things that are a couple of minor changes there.
Okay, that's great to know, because we don't know what was your idea versus his, Pete. So we would love to be educated.
Yeah, great. So, yeah, I mean, now is not the time for that, obviously, but yeah.
Yep. Well, we'll send you the drawings. Feel free to let us know if you think there's a better way to build something, then let us know.
Yeah, the one that popped right out at me was a difference in code interpretation that Bobby and I had. And I went over it with our inspector, and she's definitely like, yeah, you don't have to do that. And it would say it's like 100 2x4s or 200 2x4s or something like that.
Okay, what is it?
In the cross section of the roof with the insulation and the strapping,
Yeah.
we don't need to be looking at the end of a 2x4 because we're going to have plywood in that plane.
Doesn't need the double strapping.
It doesn't need double strapping.
Got it.
So there's a 2x4 strapping that runs parallel with the roof joists, which gives us the air space.
Yep.
And then above that is the plywood, which gives us a good substrate for the standing seam roof.
There's the plywood there. So
When
you
you
get
put
rid of that interstitial bit with the furring.
Yeah, with the standing seam roof, if you have strapping on this running sideways rather than plywood, what happens is when you get people walking around it up there, they dent it. And also sometimes you can see the strapping through the reflections in the roof.
Yeah, depending on the gauge of the metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
Okay, cool. Yeah. So mark it up for us, okay?
Yep.
Great. Great, guys.
All right.
Well,
Yeah.
onward.
Thanks a lot. Great meeting.
Good
Yeah.
meeting.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, team. Bye.
All right. You bet. Bye-bye.
Hi, guys.
Bye.